said, because the end of all men and the living will lay it to heart. In other words, the living pay attention more to what's going on in the house of mourning than they do at a party. He says, sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance, the heart is made better. Then in verse 4, he said, the heart of the wise is in the heart of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the heart of laughter or happiness, whatever things you can bring up or associate with people doing a lot of partying, carrying on, and so forth. Then he says in verse 5, it's better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. See, what the wise do, the wise would tell you, Robert, you know that ain't right. Excuse my English. I said, yeah, I don't want to talk to you. Somebody said, yeah, man, go ahead and get your gusto on. Do all you can, knowing that it's wrong. So what happens when we continue on a way that's not right? That's usually short-lived, or it can be short-lived. If it's not short-lived here, Solomon later will tell us it'll be come to destruction in the end. But he says it's better to hear the rebuke of the wise. When somebody wise tell you something, you can turn around and got a chance to turn around. But what a fool normally does is he or she will encourage you to continue in whatever way you're going. Say, well, if it feels good, do it. Then he says in verse 6, for people who have fireplaces can identify with this one, who have grown up with stoves and so forth. Some of you folks, you might not know anything about that. Today we got gas fireplaces, some of us, and we have gas stoves and electric stoves, so we wouldn't have a reason to know anything about it unless you're out camping. The crackling of thorns. That's where you go out and you gather stuff. If you watch some westerns on TV, you can get an idea of this. Those who don't know, you go out and gather some little branches and so forth, and you start a fire. We did that at Boy Scout. Well, if you want a fire to burn a long time, you better have more than just those branches. And so Solomon says the crackling of thorns he said, for as the crackling of thorns on the pop, so is the laughter of the fools. This is vanity. Well, Solomon, why are you saying that? See, because how long can you laugh all day? How long does somebody laugh? You laugh a while, then it goes away. How long does thorns burn? They make a lot of noise, don't they? You can hear them making noise, crackling. They make a lot of noise, but guess what? They don't burn very long. Now that oak log that you have in the thing, if you want fire to last a long time, you put one of those oak logs in there. Some of you like to burn sweet gum. My mom always told me oak. You put one of those in there and you can burn all day or for a very long time. Well, Solomon lets you know that, look, the laughter of fools is compared to the crackling of thorns because it's what? Short-lived. And that's why he say this also is vanity. And then in verse 7, where we pick up today, he says, surely oppression makes a wise man mad, and a gift destroys the heart. Most folks, especially righteous folks, when they see that somebody else is being bullied or oppressed, they don't just stand on the side and say, yeah, that's right. Give it to him again. Give it to him. It's not your fault he doesn't weigh 200 pounds yet, and you weigh 240. Give it to him again. Or somebody's being oppressed. Many people don't sit on the sideline and just cheer that. So oppression causes folks to get upset, especially when they know somebody else is being oppressed. And Solomon mentions that. He said, and a gift destroys the heart. That gift he's talking about right there is a bribe. We know what bribes are, don't we? See, bribes gotten a lot of people in trouble. So he mentions that. So then he goes on to say, better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. And the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Now he got two things here. He says the end of a thing is better than the beginning. Why? Are there things we can think of that is better when it comes to an end than the beginning? Well, I'm sure you can think of some. Say again. I take it you don't like needles. You need to get that gas. Yes, sir.
You get the sense of satisfaction and completion of what you've accomplished.
That's exactly right. That's basically where he's going. When you end something, or she mentioned dental appointment or either surgery or whatever you're going through, any of that stuff, it's better when it comes to an end than it is when you're going through it. Or even if you're just building a house, it's better when you finish it than it is, than you going through the process of building it. You got all these city checks and all this, all this that goes on and so forth, and delays that you could have and so forth. But Solomon says, better is the end of a thing than the beginning. He said, and the patient in spirit is better than the what? Proud in spirit. Why? Why is the patient in spirit better than the proud? Well, actually, God doesn't say a whole lot of things about proud folks. All right, pride is one of the things that's condemned. As a matter of fact, in Ecclesiastes, he mentioned Proverbs 6 is one of the areas where he talks about 6 things God's hate, and one of them being a proud look. But Solomon says, patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. For example, to look some causes for patience. In 2 Timothy chapter 6, verses 10 and 11, I want to read that for just a minute, as we look at what's wrong with pride, or what good is patience. In 2 Timothy chapter 6, verses 10 and 11, somebody get that for me, please. How does it read? 2 Timothy chapter 6, verses 10 and 11. I probably should have said 1 Timothy. There's no 2 Timothy 6. 2 Timothy stops at 4. Yeah, 1 Timothy 6, I'm sorry.
For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil.
Uh-huh.
For which some have strayed from the faith
Okay.
in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
Okay.
But you, O man of God, flee these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, gentleness.
Patience, that's the one I was looking for in there. I got the right one now. Somebody sang a song, say you got the right one there now. So that's when I hit the button on my typewriter there, and I don't know why I hit a 2. I must have been thinking about something else. But if I was inspired, I wouldn't have made that mistake. All right? Now, so patience is important. You notice he didn't use arrogance. We asked ourselves, what's wrong with pride? Somebody get me Proverbs 13:10, and somebody else get me Proverbs 16:18. 13:10 and then 16:18. And then we'll be ready to move to the next verse.
Proverbs 13:10. By pride cometh only contention, but with the well-advised is wisdom. Now,
with pride comes what? Contention. And I add that pride also can come destruction. Now, if brother Mike came up here and tried to talk to me, and he said, Brother Smith, now you made a mistake. That you should have had 1 Timothy, not 2 Timothy. I said, man, get out of here. Don't talk to me. I know what I wrote. What's that? That's pride. And everybody else just looking around and said, what's wrong with him? We see in our Bible too, we can see the same thing as 1 Timothy. Well, we have what? We have disruption. And we have destruction. Or if we approach somebody and says, so-and-so, you really shouldn't talk to her like that. Well, I don't care. She need to recognize. What are you doing? That's nothing but pride. And let me meddle a little bit. I don't mind meddling. All right, if it's good for you. Sometimes we say to somebody who's younger than us, and we like to rear back, and put our hands under whatever. You ain't lived as long as I have. You don't know what I know. Well, that's nothing but pride. Because knowledge It's not guaranteed to you because of age. Knowledge goes to whoever pursues it or encounters it. That makes sense? So sometimes when you run into somebody just because you don't know, and they say they know something and they try to point it out to you, and it's logical. It may be for your own good. Don't get upset because they're younger than you. That won't cut it. But many people have caused destructions because of pride. And as my folks used to say, you just won't listen. Well, when we don't do that, it's because of pride. Now, I gave somebody, what's the next verse I gave? Proverbs 16:18? We read 16:18. How does it read? Take your time. Pride goes before destruction. And what does the rest of it say?
And a haughty spirit before a fall.
Now, pride goes before destruction. In other words, the headline to pride, the headline to destruction, you can always find pride. Now, he's not talking about me tearing up a building or me going out to taking a hammer to my bicycle. Solomon's talking about your life, in my life. So sometimes what we have to do in life as we live, we have to get to the point to where we can tear ourselves away from being subjective and learn to be objective. And when we learn to be more objective than subjective, then we can take pride out of it. Now, let me explain what I mean. Now, I like a certain football team. All right? I ain't talking about West Virginia, Gene. They're fine too. But I like a certain football team, and I follow them. Now, you can't tell me almost anything negative about that football team. Now, I'm just joking. There was a time you couldn't tell me almost anything about that football team, and somebody would say, listen, say all you want, but they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. They didn't even make it to the playoffs. They lost. Well, I get upset about all that. I'm upset about all I want to. What's that? Pride? And that's subjective. Because all anybody has to do is bring up their smartphone or pick up the newspaper, whatever the case it is, and find out what the results were and tell what their status was. Folks, we have to learn to accept things as it is. When you fail to accept things as they are that are documented facts, it is because of pride. And it will destroy you. Many people lost their jobs for things like that. Pride. Pride. Especially like I talk about this sometimes in some of schools and stuff like this. Tell somebody, so-and-so, you really need to consider turning your plans in on time. They don't know who is she to tell me turn my plans in on time. She don't even know how to write a plan. She might not know how to write the plan, but she's still your supervisor. So what happens? Pride. And then end up like it did like one person recently. The person said the school says, we're not going to renew your contract. Well, those are chilling words right there, because that means that whatever you've been paying as a result of working there, you need to find another source of income. All because of what? Pride. Yes, sir.
When we let pride start to be our controlling factor, then we've reached the pinnacle of our accomplishments and what we do. We don't need to improve. We don't need to be alert of things. And that is what usually leads us to our destruction.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say that pride also, I notice, when studying with people, that inability to humble themselves and have an honest heart because of their pride keeps them out of the kingdom.
Well, that's very true. That's very true. So we see that pride is the forefront of destruction. And then Solomon says in the latter part of that verse, I don't want to preach a sermon on that. I'm just going to move on here. Latter part of that verse, he says, don't be hasty in your spirit to what? To be what? To be what in verse 9? Yeah, what? I can't hear you guys. Yeah,
Angry.
you know, that tell me somebody might have a problem with that. That's why you don't want to say it, but I'll say it for you. You two folks can know too. The word is angry. Don't be hasty in your spirit to get angry. For, this is probably why nobody wanted to say it, didn't want to say it because of what's come next. For or because anger rests where? In the bosom of who? I didn't say that. The Bible said that. You know somebody always fly off the handle? Everything. Just get angry. Can't talk to them. And you know, like even in our Wednesday night class, you know, we talk about, people talk about things and so forth, and we were talking about forgiveness, and I think it came up one time when somebody had mentioned, said, well, you know, I can't talk. What if I can't talk to this person because they like to fly off the handle, they just get angry? Well, sometimes you get people for whom Christ has not been formed in them. Well, on that subject, we'll deal with that on Wednesday night. You still have to find a way to talk to them. But listen, if somebody flies off the handle all the time with anger, or if you fly off the handle every time somebody touch your shoulder, don't get angry about everything. Solomon said, anger rests in the bosom of whom? Of fools. Somebody said, well, you know, I'm not going to act like a fool anymore. That means I'm acting like a fool. If you get angry about everything, why are you angry? Need to find out what makes you angry. And sometimes if whatever it is that makes you angry, you have two things to do. Take care of it or leave it alone. Because it might be like one sister I knew that was in a certain city I was in, and it's unfortunate. She was a good sister, personally anyways, but she had a few issues, all of sin, and sometimes you tell her things, and if it had to do with her children, she would get angry. Her son would come to Sunday school, and all the other kids would have some type of book or something that they would go through and whatever. Here her son was 7 or 8 years old. He got a comic book sitting up in Bible class. They would say, her sister, you're not training him in the right way. She would, that's my son. Get out of my face. She'd always get angry. But one day, her anger gave her a heart attack. Or she had a heart attack while she was angry. That's to be more accurate. I don't know if the anger gave her a heart attack or not, but we know she had a heart attack and she got upset. She got upset and she had a heart attack and they had to take her to the doctor. And she was hospitalized. And when I remember one of the guys says to her, says, Sister so-and-so, you know, this is just a brush you had with God here. Said, but you need to learn to stop being so angry. So what's wrong? And I don't know what the final results of that was after that, but I thought I'd make that point. Anger can do some things to you physically too. And Solomon says it rests in the bosom of fools. Now, verse 10, Solomon said, don't say, what's the cause of the former days, or why is it that the former days were better than these? For you do not know, you do not inquire wisely concerning this. Why would you ask the question? And you probably have asked it too. I mean, I've done it too, you know, in my younger years before I knew better. I said, you know, why is it that these days are better now than they are now? And some of the younger folks coming along and living now will say, you know what? That listen to the parents talk about days gone by. So why is it that these days now are better than days before? Why is it we didn't have air conditioning back in the 40s with some of us? Or why is it it's 40s? I didn't have no air conditioning. Well, I wasn't born then, but I didn't have air conditioning in the 60s. Hello, and these folks around here talking about you need a generator and all this kind of stuff. So when the power goes out, things keep going. I'm not mad at you. I got one. I bought one too. But listen, in those days, we opened the windows Some of us didn't even have the electric fan. Listen, we got a paper fan to swing and things of this nature. And I tell you one even better than that. Where I came from, sometimes we didn't have a paper fan. We went out and cut a branch off the tree that had enough leaves on it and fan on a nice hot day in July or August. Say again? But we say that, and we say it often, and sometimes as we watch the news, we say, boy, times are bad now. They didn't used to be this way. Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were. The only thing is now, only way you can tell now is that they put more of it on your smartphone, or they put more on your TV. The heart of man has not changed. There's always been evil upon the earth. As a matter of fact, in Genesis 6, the Bible says before God told Noah, his folks, to go before Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, so that the man's deeds were evilly, continually. It was so bad that God said, listen, I'm going to destroy the earth. I need to start all over again. I'm going to start it all over again. So we just need to be aware of those particular things that we shouldn't question whether or not the days or former days are better than the others. But what we should do in our day and time is just thank God for being able to live in this day and time and to be able to do what you do and to be able to serve him to the best you can and be able to travel on this journey. Because I want to tell you something. The same thing happening now was the same thing when you were born. It's the same thing that be happening when you and I are gone. People will still be coming to the earth. They're still being born. People will still grow up. People will still have the seasons of life. They have their springs, their summers, their fall, their winters. Whenever they depart, they will still do that. And the earth will go on. There's a soap opera they used to have on TV called As the World Turns. Some of y'all know about that. The world will continue to turn. And God will continue to rule the earth until your time and my time, appointed time, is ended. Okay? So Solomon says, don't be asking those questions. He said, wisdom is good with an inheritance in verse 11. He moves to a different topic. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. In other words, if you use wisdom, you will profit, says Solomon basically says. Now, there are some advantages to wisdom, which he will mention here in just a minute. Look at verse 11. He said, wisdom is a what? There's defense. And what else is a defense? Come on, y'all don't be afraid to say it. You go to work for it every day. Money. I don't know why you folks scared to talk about money. Solomon says, wisdom is defense and money is defense. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Listen, if a person has wisdom, my dad used to always talk about a man should get wisdom. If a person has wisdom, wisdom will cause you to avoid a lot of things. All right? Wisdom is also profitable for living. Now, both of them are good if you use them right. Wisdom gives life to those who have it. And then he talked about money being a defense. And we're not talking about it in courtrooms, but of course, people who go to court, it's good you do have money, but that's not the type of defense he's talking about. I want to call your attention to Proverbs 10:15 and also 14:20. Proverbs 10:15 and also Proverbs 14:20. And by the way, Solomon wrote this book too, Proverbs. Proverbs 10:15, how does it read?
The rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty.
Now, the rich man's wealth is his strong city. A guy who's got plenty of money, that's his strong suit. He can negotiate almost anything he wanted to do. It was that way then. It's that way now. Except some things, you get in trouble with, your money won't do you any good. You know, if you get a terminal disease and you can offer all the money you want, you'll spend the money, but eventually the doctor will say, go home. I can't help you. There's nothing I can do. I practice medicine. I don't make man, I practice on man. All right, so he says wisdom is the defense. Now, what else does it say in that text? Read that again.
The rich man's wealth is the strong suit.
Uh-huh.
The destruction of the poor is their poverty.
The destruction of the poor is their poverty. That's still true. That's still true. A lot of poor people don't survive every day because they're poor. They can't get health care. They can't get whatever. I've never seen anybody saying, thank God that I'm poor. I've never seen anybody say that. If I do, I would say, you know what? You need to, as my mom would say, you need to get your head examined. Why is it you glad that you're poor? Or are you planning on passing next day or something like that? For those of you who come in and win Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Is a strong man, the rich man, is his richness, or his being rich is his strong suit, so to speak. Now, notice what else Solomon says. Notice what else he says down in verse, in the part of verse 12. He says, but wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Now, you could be rich and you could be rich today and poor tomorrow. Anybody believe that? We've known, at least I have known, and some of you too, you've known sports players. They got rich overnight and they got broke by morning. One kid I remember several years ago, he signed a lucrative contract for millions to play for a certain football team. And what he did was he decided what he wanted to do was to rent a jet airliner. And he rented the airliner, and he didn't want nobody on that plane but him. Now that plane held 100 and some people. And he bought every seat on that plane just so he could be able to say, I flew on this plane by myself with just him and the pilot. And whatever stewardess it took, to serve him and so forth. And then he went out. He didn't stop there. He went out and invested in buying some bed floaters. Stay with me now. These are things you put under beds, just in case there's a flood in your house and it will lift the bed up, the bed will float on water. True story. He invested in that. And you know what? In a few years, he was begging. Why? Because he didn't have wisdom. Didn't have wisdom. So we need to do that too. Wisdom give life to them that have it. And then in verse 13 he says, consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he has made crooked? In other words, who can improve upon what God has done? You can't improve upon that. Folks try, and that's a lesson over there in Job for us in Job 12. That Job talked about some of that. I will read some of that. I won't read all of it. You go home and read the rest of Job yourself. Look with me, please, at Job chapter 12 and around verse well, let me start at verse 12 and around verse 12. Job says, with the ancient is wisdom, and the length of days understanding. With him is wisdom and strength. He has counsel and understanding. But behold, he breaketh down, and it cannot be built again. He's talking about God. He shuts up a man, and there can be no opening. Behold, he withhold the waters, and they dry up. Also he sendeth them out, and they overturn the earth. With him is strength and wisdom. He deceived, and the deceived and the deceiver are his. He leadeth counselors away spoil and make the judges fools. He means, so in other words, God can make a fool out of anybody he wants to. So he looseneth the bonds of kings and girdeth their loins with a girdle. He leadeth princes away spoil and overthrows the mighty. He removes away the speech of the trusty and taketh away the understanding of the ages. Now, when I came up, we sang a song, God can do anything but fail. But listen, God is greater than us. And when God makes something, it's made. We can't change it. And when we get to the end of this particular chapter here, there's some things we're going to elaborate on and share with you concerning some things that God had made. You can go to the last verse whenever you want to, and you'll see. But he says, in the days of prosperity, be what? Be what? I didn't hear nobody. Be joyful. Thank you very much. I want to know somebody's here besides me. In the days of prosperity, be joyful, but in the days of adversity, consider. God has also set the one against the other to the end that man should find nothing after him. Now, I have never seen anybody saying, you know what? I got a problem. What's your problem, Robert? Well, you know, I just go to work and I just make too much money. So what? Yeah, bring me a towel so I can cry about that. The Lord blessed me with too much. You ever seen anybody like that? No, and you should. And he says in the days of, and then sometimes people go like, well, I have to apologize. What are you apologizing for? Because the Lord blessed you, and I just throw a figure out there. The Lord bless you to make 40, 50, 150, or $200,000. The Lord bless you to make that, so you complain. Why are you complaining? Are you doing it illegally? Then why are you complaining? Give thanks and help somebody if you can. All right? But the book says, in the days of prosperity, be joyful. But the days of adversity, consider. In other words, when you're not doing so well, you need to sit down and take a look at your life. We need to always look at our lives every day anyway, but sit down and take a look at your life and see what it is I'm doing wrong. Because it might be that the reason that you're not prospering is because you're doing something wrong in your life. But I can't take an examination of you, and you can't examine me. You have to do that for yourself. So Solomon says, consider, he said, God has set one over against the other until the end that man should find nothing after him. He said, all things have I seen in the days of vanity. There is a just man that perish in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. Now, he makes a contrast here. He said, listen, what Solomon basically says is, listen, it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't matter. It's probably a bad term to use. Listen, even if you live right, it does not guarantee you that you're going to live to be 96. It doesn't guarantee you that. We've known some righteous people died at 36 and 26 and 16. It doesn't guarantee that. And then we've known some people who were wicked. They lived to be 106 and 96. And we look at them and say, why did the Lord take so-and-so away and allow them to live such a long time? Man, they've been wicked all their lives. So they chewed more tobacco and drank more liquor, and they were drunk more days than they were sober. Why? But see, that's an observation that Solomon says that, you can see. He says it's vanity. In verse 15, I've seen the days of my vanity, a just man perish in his righteousness, and a wicked man that prolongs his life in wickedness. But don't be righteous over much. In other words, you talk about don't be self-righteous. Don't be too right. Now, he's not saying don't be right. You ought to do things right. But when I stick my chest out that, listen, yeah, I'm righteous and others are wicked. Don't be too right. Because the book teaches in Romans, all have what? Sinned and come close. Did he say come close or come short? Short, fall short. He said, be not righteous over much, neither make yourself over wise. You always have folks, I'm smarter than everybody else. Why should you destroy yourself? What he said, Solomon? You destroy yourself doing that. Like one teacher says one time to a guy, he says, son, you're smart. He wasn't talking to me. He said, you're smart, you're real smart. He said, yeah, that's right, I'm smart. He said, too smart. And then he gave him his test paper back. Wait a minute, how did I miss this? Sometimes we do that in life too. But he said, be not over righteous over much, neither make yourself over wise. Why should you destroy yourself? And then in verse 17, he said, don't be over much wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why should you die before your time? Well, that bell's will run me out of here. I want you to look at that for just a minute. Why should you die before your time? Now, the book, verse 16, just mentions, being over extremism. I hope you understand that. But he talked about in verse 17, dying before your time. What do we mean, die before our time? Does not. The Bible tells us in Hebrews 9, is appointed unto man once to die, and after that the judgment. Does the book tell you that? You mean to tell me that I can mess that up? Oh, oops. You mean to tell me that I could die before the time that God has appointed for me to die? Oops. Solomon says, why should you die before your what? Before your time. I heard my mother say that several years ago. She said, you can shorten your time on the earth. Sometimes when I thought that, it was time for me to use deodorant, some of y'all know about that, right? You're big enough at that time. She said, boy, don't get too big for your britches. She said, the Bible teaches you to honor your parents and your mother and father upon the earth, that your days may be long upon the land which he gives you. And that kept me in place. I said, man, I don't want to die early. But Solomon says, you can die before your time. Somebody goes out here and jumps off a building. They said, well, it was the Lord, that was his time. The Lord didn't tell you to jump off that building. I don't know when your appointed time was, but you died before your time if you jumped off that building, especially when it's 20, 30, 40 feet below and it's concrete. So Solomon says, why should you die before your time? It is good. I think I might have time to get this in. It is good that you should take hold of this. Yea, also from this, withdraw not your hand, for he that fears God shall come forth of them all. That in your Bible? And then he says, wisdom strengthen the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. For there's not a just man upon the earth that does good and sinneth not. That's the text we were looking at in Romans. And that goes back to Romans 3. Even Solomon recognized then that there was a just man on the earth that could say he's so right that he does no wrong. He says also take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest your servants curse you. In other words, don't listen to everything. You listen to too much. And sometimes we can listen too much. Somebody say, how could you listen to too much? You always got your ear to the ground. Some things you need to ignore. That's all Solomon basically said. If you pay attention to everything, sometimes you hear people say bad things about you. Sometimes they might not mean it, but they still said it. But when you do it before you fly off and handle them and decide, look, come in, let me talk to you for a minute. Before you do that, just remember, you probably said some bad things about folks also. That's in the book. So, before the bell rings, he says, for oftentimes you yourselves in your own heart know that you have cursed others. He says, and this have I proved by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it is far from me. That which is far off and exceeded deep, who can find it out? He said, I applied my heart to know, to search, and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. He said, I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Who pleases God shall escape from her. Whosoever pleases God shall escape her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. Now, Solomon's not talking about all women. I need to have that understand right now. You know, like some people like to take things out of the Bible. If it's saying anything about a woman, take it out of the Bible and all this kind of stuff, rewriting Bible. That's not what Solomon's talking about. There are some people that are women that are evil, and there are some men that are evil. But I'm going to address that next week, because this deal with some, and then give you a background on some things, some people that Solomon was dealing with, and all of them wives he had, all them concubines, and those women who fooled him. Then you understand why he says what he says. All right? You got fooled as many times he did, you'll say that. But that bell rang, and I'm going to be kind, and I'm going to stop. Class dismissed. Thank you for coming. Your participation.